So this is a little bit more complicated, but I don't believe anything is complicated if you break it down into simple steps. So fingers crossed I get it right, but if I don't, we'll do it until we do, and if I get it wrong, I'll explain what I did wrong so that you know. So I want to teach you how to make this. And this isn't what it looks like, because it looks like half the pattern and then a white matte layer over the top, but it's not. If I lift this, you will see that this is open. And when I was making this, this was a mistake because I was trying to do so I decided that I was going to have a day playing on canvas, and I came up with something really cool, and then I couldn't remember how I did it. And it took me 3 hours to work out how I'd done it again. But in that 3 hours, I discovered this. So sometimes things are meant to be, right? And I love this design because you can have it like this, and you could then have your sentiment either written or stamped on there. But if you turn it this way, it looks like a flower basket. So then I would take, I've got a little bag, this is a demo I'm going to do on air, I've got a little bag of flowers ready to cut so that I can create this beautiful flower basket. And then if you wanted to, you could paper piece this and it would look lovely. So I'm going to teach you how to do this bit because this is the bit that I got really excited about, okay? So let me show you how we do this in Canvas Workspace. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to select a pattern and I need to select a shape. So I'm going to go to SVG and choose File, and I'm going to go back into my patterns and I'm going to choose pattern number 17. So we'll go down until we get to 17. We'll double click that. Oh, bear with, cancel, and OK. So I've now got, okay, let's try that again. It's my fault for doing that wrong. So let's see what I've got if I press OK now. Cancel that. Start again, Melanie. Sometimes I do too much too quickly, and then I'm like, oh, now it's frozen. That happens quite a lot. So now when I press OK, there's my pattern, which is fabulous. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide it so that I know that I've done that bit. So I'm going to go to Edit and Divide. And then I'm going to move the shape and I'm going to use this, not this. So I'm going to drag this over here and I'm going to put it in the bin. Okay, so I've now got my pattern that's divided. So it now sees it as one piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is bring on a shape. So I want to choose the file again. Go back into here. I want to go to card shapes and I want 8 by 8 and I want number 3. You can use any of them. Doesn't matter. So then I'm going to press OK and I'm just going to take that one and get rid of those. The reason that we've put 4 on is because they are exactly 2 mil offset lines all the way through, and rather than you having to do that all the time, we've given you 4 to start with because it's easier to delete them than it is to add them in. It's quicker. The reason that we use Scan and Cut and the reason that we use Canvas is to make this, to speed up the boring part of it, to do the fun bit of it. So if we can do that on all stages, even better. Right, so I'm now going to bring this over here and I'm going to just resize this to the size that I want it to be. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking at the left-hand edge here of this shape, so this side bit here, and I'm positioning it centrally to those little teardrop pieces that are in here. So I'm trying my best to get it as near as centre as possible, and then if I want to just stretch that out a little bit, so maybe you want less room for your sentiment or maybe you want more room for your sentiment, it's up to you. So I'm going to have it about there, I think. So I'm going to duplicate this a couple of times just because I like to have them there. It doesn't matter if I don't use them, but at least I've got them. Right, so I'm going to drag a box around both of these. And I'm going to go to Edit and I'm going to Subtract. So that gives me something that I don't want. This is for something later on. So I'm going to undo that. And this is our play around. And I'm going to drag this. And this is the only way that I learned Canvas was by doing this. And because there's an undo button, it's not as frustrating. So now I'm going to try remove overlapped. So now what I've got is that, and I don't want that either. So my only other option now is to think differently. So this is on top. What happens if I send it to the back? So if I go to edit and send that to the back and then do the same thing, what do we get then? So let's go to edit and subtract again, and I get this, and that's what I want. So I want part of the pattern inside here, but this is all one piece, okay? So if I now bring in one of the original shapes and I create an offset line, so that this bit will cut into your card and that bit will cut out, okay? So now if I want to, what's the best way of describing it? Get it to cut out of the card as a piece. I'm going to work with this layer. So I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to go to offset line and I'm going to create a 4mm outward, 3mm would do, but 4mm outward, and delete the original and press OK. So now I've got a piece that will perfectly sit over the top of there. So now I'm going to drag a box around those two, go to edit and align centrally vertically, edit and align centrally horizontally, and then edit and divide. And that's going to punch the pattern and this shape through. So now I'm going to move that shape out of there. I'm going to move the whole thing over here. I've still got the waist bit that I can do something else with if I want to. So I'm going to come back to this bit later on at some point, and I'm going to group that together. So I'm going to edit and group it. Because you can save, when you save a project, you can save the whole thing and it doesn't all have to be within the mat, so that when you come back to do something like that, you can. So now what I've got is, I'm going to move that out of the way, is I've got exactly what I showed you before. And I can rotate, if I rotate that, so I'll just do it manually like this. There's my little flower basket. So I've got that. But then what if I want matte layers for this? And what if I want matte layers for my sentiment? So I can create inward offset lines with this. So if we go to edit, well, let's create a 2mm inward offset line and delete the original. So now I've got my first matte layer to go in there. And this is going to take a little bit of adjusting because you can't align it centrally, vertically and horizontally this time. So just use the arrows on your keypad. And highlight that again and move it over one more. So now we've got a perfect matte layer there. If I want another one, I can do, let's move this out of the way. Let's do another one from that. So I want to duplicate this first because I don't want to delete that. So I'm going to do that. Go to edit. Actually, there's a quicker way, which I've just thought about. So go to edit and create another, let's do a 3mm inward this time, and leave the original as it is. So those two are already aligned. So all I need to do then is just group those two together. So edit and group. And then I've got perfect two matte layers that can sit on top of there, like that. And then I've got one spare. So now I can create my mats and layers. So let's group that together first of all. Go to edit and group, because you can always ungroup it before you download it. Now I can make my card, a matte layer to go behind everything, and then my card blank. So I'm going to go to edit and offset line, and I'm going to create a 3mm outward offset line and keep the original as it is. And then I'm going to create a 6mm outward offset line, and this time I'm going to delete the original. So then those two, edit and group them, and then select that, go to edit and align it centrally vertically, edit and align it centrally horizontally. And now I have my card base, my matte layer, my cutout detail, what was my aperture, but it's now not an aperture, and all these are the matte layers that can sit on top of it. So you've created a whole card with all the mattes and layers in one go. And then all I would do is ungroup it all, send it down to the machine, and you start to cut it. And that for me is brilliant, because especially if you make to sell, because if you make to sell, the one thing that you never, ever, ever get paid for is your time. If it takes you 2 hours to make a card and you can only charge £3.50 for it, that's really frustrating. Because as a creative and somebody that wants to have a little sideline business going on, you never get paid for your time. And if you're just doing it as a little bit of a hobby for a little bit of extra pocket money, then fair enough. But if you're doing it, you know, seriously to earn a living from it, you want to make them as quickly as possible, but you still want them to look wow. That's exactly how you can do it in here. Now, while we're here, I just want to show you something else, because I was going to do this as a separate video, but you know what, we might as well do it now. So I'm going to put that in the, well, first of all, let me show you how you save it. And I'm going to save this bit as well. So just go to project at the top here and just press plus. And it tells you, this is why I like the web app version, because it's familiar. But also when I hover over something, when I work with it on a PC, it tells me what it is. So I'm going to save it as another project. So now I can get rid of that, but I've always got it. So let me put that in the bin. And let's bring this in. Now, this is, now what we've done is we've taken part of the pattern out, haven't we? So we've subtracted this from part of a pattern that we started with. So what else can we do with this, I wonder? Well, let's look at this. So I've got this. This is when I start like squealing a little bit when I'm at work and everyone goes, what have you found now? This is my favourite part of my job, of anything that I do, is this. So when I go to edit and I duplicate it, and by this I mean finding something that shouldn't do something and making it do it, or working stuff out. I love a puzzle. So if I go to edit and let me have a look. Let's see if it allows me to flip it. Right, it's not allowing me to flip it for some reason. So I'm going to send it down to my scan and cut and then see if it allows me to, well, it will flip it in there. So I'm going to download this now. And it's sometimes when you've done a lot of something, so when you've been working with a pattern or a shape for a long time, sometimes it goes, nope, not telling you the size anymore, like that. And then you know it's time to download it and make it do what you want it to do again. Okay, so if you ever get stuck and it does that and you find it really frustrating, I'm just going to see if I can do it by, no, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to download it to my machine. And we don't need to see my machine because I'm just going to retrieve it, which we've done before throughout this. Oh, I'm just doing it for you anyway. So I'm going to retrieve it from the cloud and bring it onto my screen. And then I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to select that one. I'm going to go to object edit and I'm going to flip that one. Okay. So now when I press OK, I'm going to save it back into the cloud. And then I'm going to go back to Canvas and retrieve it. So I'm going to close that and I'm going to get rid of that, so I don't get mixed up. Now you'll see that it hasn't appeared, and it hasn't appeared because I need to refresh it. If Canvas was closed and I opened Canvas first, and then it will be there. But because I've already got it open, I need to refresh it. And now it's brought on that file that we've just had. So now you can see I can move it. Let's see if it allows you to flip it again. Yeah, so your flip function's back. And that's the thing. Sometimes you just do so many steps and then it goes, nope, not going to show you the size anymore. You can see now the size is back there. Not going to allow you to do that anymore. All you do is save it to your machine, send it back, or send it to your USB, put it in your machine, and then import it again and it will work. So I'm going to drag both of those, I'm going to edit them, and I'm going to align them this time to the top or the bottom because I want them to be level. I'm going to click off it, and then I'm going to highlight one of them. So select that one, and I'm just going to nudge it over a little bit further so I don't have too much of a distance. So when I did this, I was like, oh, that's like a butterfly. And funnily enough, we've got butterflies in our reflections. Sorry, words weren't then. So let me show you this. If we come back to here, you can cut it into your card. Actually, I've gone one step ahead there. Look, you can cut that into a rectangle now, and you have this new beautiful pattern. Because remember, this pattern didn't start like this. We've created this by taking a section of it from one of the card shapes and creating something completely different. But how do we create a matte layer for that so that we can then achieve this? This is the bit that's cool. How do we do that? Well, we do it this way. So we click on this, we group it together, and then we go to edit, and I tend to work with a 5mm offset for this. It might not be enough, but we'll try it. So a 5mm, oh, first things first, bear with, duplicate it. So we've got an original. So if it all goes wrong, yes, we can undo it, but we've also got an original. Right, so I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to create now a 5mm outward offset line, and I'm going to delete the original. And it gives me this fandangle great thing. Now this reminds me, this made me smile actually the other day because it reminds me of spirograph. If you remember that as a child, this is what it reminds me of now. The other thing, I used to love spirograph because I'd do it and then I would sit there for hours and colour in all these different areas with different colours. You can draw that. So if you want something for the children to colour in, you can draw, or even if you want to colour it in, maybe you want to Zentangle and doodle inside it, draw it out and it will draw it just like that. I think that's brilliant. It's another string to your bow, isn't it? But what we want to do is use this to be able to make that cut out. So I'm going to drag all of that and I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to weld it. Because I've created a 5mm outward offset line, it should give me enough of an overlap to be able to weld all those pieces together like that. Now, we've also got this little bit in the middle, which I don't mind, and there's two little teeny tiny pieces there. So if we undo that, if that bothers you, there's two ways you can get around it. You can send it to your machine and send it back, which will allow you to ungroup it so you can delete them. Or you can go back and this time we create a 6mm offset line. So we go to edit and we create 6mm. Now it might be that I have to do 4 instead. I can't work it out without seeing it. So I just do it because I've nothing to lose, have I? It's a bit of time. I've got an undo button, so I'm not wasting anything. So let's weld that and see what we get with that. So we've got it smaller now. And then at this point, I would send it to my machine, or you could do it at 7mm. But then you're sitting there and thinking, no, actually, I'm going to do it at 7mm because I want to get rid of that completely. So let's just do it. So go to edit, offset, 7mm. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's going to give me a really thick border, it's all right, I've got a solution for that as well. So let's press that. Look how it gives you a different pattern each time. I love that. I'm going to actually do that. It'd be lovely on parchment, you know, if you've got the embossing starter kit, that would look lovely embossed. Right, so now I've got a perfect matte layer for this, okay? But I don't want it to be that thick. I want it to be narrower than that. So all I do is create inward offset lines from this. So go to edit and let's create a, because we did 7, let's create a 3mm inward offset line and delete the original. So now when I put that in there, I've now got a 4mm border all the way around the outside edge. And then you can cut that out of a piece of card. So if you edit and divided that then, wait for it to do its thing, move that, you've now got a brand new shape that you can start to play with. And you've also still got all this waste bit that you can then edit and group. And you've still got all that. Now, let's just have a look at this pattern, for example. You could have just this, well, you could just have those 4 petals there with these little bits here. You could just have this as your pattern. You could then have this as your pattern. You could have this as your, there are so many different parts of that that you can change again just by deleting bits off. It's not just a single pattern anymore, it's dozens of opportunities. And that's why we never ever compound our paths. Because if I'd said to the graphic designer, right, I need you to digitally punch that on Illustrator, you won't be able to do all that. Because you wouldn't be able to access that inside piece because it sees it from the beginning as one shape. Because I dig my heels in and go, no, I don't want you to compound it. I want to be able to do that myself. It now gives me all those opportunities. And that's just one pattern and one shape. So you've got thousands of objects, which for me is the most creative thing ever. And I love that. Because one day you might want that, the next day you might just want it as a ribbon slider to go across. The next day you might just want to create a whole background of that small bit in the middle. You can do that because that graphic designer doesn't do that and compound it. And that for me is a joy. So let me show you the beginnings of what I'm going to do as a demonstration on air with that. Because I just want to show you where you can take it. So I've got all my little bits and pieces cut out. Now this is me making it smaller. So remember at the beginning when I talked to you about resizing reflections, I've done 4 on one sheet. So it's given me just the right size. So this is the piece that I've just shown you how to do. I've cut it twice and glued it together. This is the matte layer that we've just created. But instead of dividing it, I've put it around the outside like we've just done. Then I've created another offset line for my matte layer. Then I've created another offset line for my card front. And then I've created this as an easel. So that's going to go there like that. That's all going to sit on top of it. I've done spread your wings and soar from a font inside your machine's memory, and I've done it out of our vinyl. And then all the centre of this is going to be filled with those flowers. One shape, one pattern. Why would you not want to buy a USB that has all that on? I think it's fabulous. The creativity that Canvas gives you, when you think you've exhausted this, you then go into Canvas and it all starts again. And I could literally, I think I could probably sit with these patterns and these shapes and work on it every day for a month and still have room to do something else at the end of it. And for me as a crafter, that gives me incredible value for money. And that's why I love doing digital Craftorium, because it opens this up. And then when you've done all this, you then bring in the shapes that you had from the panel, or the patterns that you had from the panels on the boxes one, if you bought that, and you start all over again. Creativity, literally, at your fingertips. Right, the next thing I'm going to show you is something to do with Minecraft Studio. And that's because we have a bundle of the SVG USB with the Minecraft Studio bundle. And if you've never used Minecraft Studio before, or if you have, but you've always fussy cut things out, this is a game changer if you've got a scan and cut. So I'll see you in a minute. Don't miss it. If you want to see more from Highlight Crafts, make sure you click the like button. Subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below, and click the bell icon to receive notifications of all our future content. You can also click here to see our latest video, or click here to see more videos like this one.